Journeys Ahead, Beyond Trilogy, Part 3, Chapter 2, The Boss Man. Written and narrated by T.S. ProArt. Father? Joby nervously asked as everyone on Team Orbisol took in the sight of a roughed up, damaged, but very much alive, Kor Novason. Everything suddenly felt to fall still. The apocalyptic wind seemed to cease. The chattering of the lost children came to an eerie standstill. For a world that was so silent, it somehow managed to become even more so. Kor... What? Void shakily spoke in both a panicked yet inquisitive voice as his thought-to-be dead brother slowly and carefully made his way towards the group. Wait, Kor? Your brother? T asked with a sapphire blue glare as the figure maneuvered closer. No, it's gotta be a memory taking form. We watched him and his whole ship rip itself apart! Jida exclaimed as her hair began to flare up in dread as a large orange spark grew closer and closer. Looking up with his red eyes, Void locked them with his brother's orange flares, as the two of them were now less than 4 feet apart. Now getting a closer look at his brother's face, Void could see more and more detail. The little scar around his eye had now been expanded by a wave of his orange matter essence. Little healed-over cuts and burn marks covered his face, having been sealed over by his natural spark biology, but still remained visible just a tad. His horns, although the same, now sprouted with thinner and sharper ridges, making it look more akin to antlers than anything else. They had also looked to morph into more amber-shaded material, pulsating with his fall-colored flares within. Yet, minus these absurd differences, the reunion felt a little too similar to how they had last reunited. It was unexpected, but instead of spilling tears and sobs of recollection, this time, it was pure disbelief with a wave of confusion. Void. Kor stuttered in a softer, less boastful tone as he gently reached forwards for his little brother. The older Novason's arms were now desaturated, rusted and sharper. Jagged orange matter spikes had now been protruding from these metal limbs, making them look more like porcupines in an odd way. The tips of his fingers had now been gifted with glowing orange claws that looked so sharp that they could have torn metal with a simple poke. And yet, as they latched around Void's cheeks, the red spark didn't feel the sensation of a threat. Rather, it was that of a longing, brotherly touch. Kor, Void replied in a weakening tone that sparked the two of them to suddenly embrace. For a long few moments, the two of them were silent, leaving Jida, her 2 daughters, and the reflections to all just stare on in shock. What's going on? Vivian asked, as she and the other Voids just looked at one another in surprise. With a shaking breath, Joby just stared at the scene before them all. Her irises had shrunk. Her arms began to rattle and shake, while her breathing started to quiver. It couldn't be, she thought. It just couldn't. Looking at one another again, Void shook his head, unable to form words from this unexpected reunion. Kor looked the same, stun-locked, unable to communicate. He didn't even have enough strength to question why he had turned red, or who the others were in that given moment. That was, until he narrowed his gaze up and set his sights upon Joby. Slowly letting go of Void with a face dropping to shock, both father and daughter locked eyes for the first time in over a decade. Tension suddenly felt to be at an all-time high as Kor's eyeballs flickered with a sense of wonder. Joby? The larger spark asked, as his daughter glared back with a stern stare. She didn't speak. She couldn't even muster a rational thought. Joby's head was rushing with so many emotions, feelings, and worst of all, a sense of sudden fear. I don't believe my eyes. It's you. You got so big. Cor went on as a quivering smile started to grow on his face. You made it. You're alive. You're all grown up. How many years has it been? He went on while reaching a hand out for her. My child. I never thought I'd... Before Cor could finish, Joby suddenly shouted aloud with a snarling attitude. Swinging her arms forwards, she activated both her light matter blades and slashed off Cor's right-reaching hand. Shouting in pain to gasping shocks, Cor stumbled back onto his rear, while Joby readied herself in a primal and readied stance. Cor! Void shouted as both Jida and Pavnu reached for Joby in shock. Boss man! Ironhoof exclaimed while turning both of his hands in the revolvers. Aiming forwards, he locked his sights upon Joby as several of the kids took out knives or summoned their own kinds of weapons through magical means. Hey! Vivian exclaimed as she raided her frostbiter and aimed back at Ironhoof. Whoa, wait, what the hell just happened? T exclaimed in shock while looking from both sides, leaving Vode, V, Chibi, and Tiger gobsmacked to the sudden action Joby had committed. Joby! Sister! Lower your weapons! Pavnu demanded in sudden worry as Void knelt down to his brother's injured build. Honey! Why did you... Jida exclaimed while the light matter girl glared down upon Cor's wincing form. Are you kidding me? Are you actually asking me why? Joby barked as her horns shimmered with a burning yellow flare. Joby, please, lower your swords. Void pleaded as Cor slowly began to stand back up. As he did, he reached his other rusted hand down and collected his severed hand, even releasing a pent-up breath in the process. Are you kidding me? Do you not remember what he's done? What he did to me? Joby barked as Ironhoof charged his revolvers in a stunning yellow shine. Give me the wood, boss, and I'll fire! The robot called as Jojo just watched with a mortified face upon his shoulders. Ironhoof, lower your weapons. All of you. Stand down. Cor exclaimed in pain as he reattached his hand by the dark matter within his wrist. What? Are you serious? This psycho just cut off your hand! The robot barked, leaving Cor to turn and glare in his direction. This psycho is my daughter! And it was rightfully deserved. The dark matter-infested spark barked back as he returned his gaze upon Joby with softening eyes. Truthfully, I deserve more than a simple slash to the hand. Cor remorsefully stated as everyone suddenly lowered their weapons in a hesitant manner, leaving Joby, the last of which, to glare, take in a breath, and slowly retract her blades. Collecting herself, she eyed her father and then everyone's concerned stares. It wasn't just her who had questions. They all did. Recalling upon Void's teachings, Joby began to calm her mind and breathe before being the one to cut the reunion crap. How the hell are you alive? She asked, in a burning attitude, as all the reflections watched on to the family drama, unsure of what to make of it all. Huffing out a breath of cold air, Cor eyed his child, then Jida and Pavnu, to the reflections, the children, and at last, Void, whose eyes called to him in a demanding tone. Ironhoof, Jojo, dismissed. Children, you may return to your activities. Cor commanded with a wave in his hands before looking at the group before him. Come. It seems that there is much to discuss on both of our ends. Cor continued as he looked away from Joby's hate-filled gaze. Turning with a hand gesture, Yolder and Novason began to march back into the strange makeshift town in slow steps, leaving the others to ponder for a moment. Looking back, Void gave Joby a stern look with his red eyes before glancing back to the others. Without saying a word, He gestured with his hand and hesitantly began to follow behind his brother. "Joby, are you okay?" Pavnu worriedly asked as she rested one pawed hand over the spark's shoulder while taking her hand in the other. "What do you think?" Joby replied in a cold voice as Jida approached and wrapped her arm around her quivering pink form. "Stay close to me, honey. I'll protect you," she assured as they all began to follow suit. Is there something we should know about?" T inquired as he eyed his brother's reflection ahead. "It's a very long story, and it isn't one of the nicer ones," Jida answered before they all entered the strange little town. From all around, the town's makeshift, mashed-up buildings stretched both far and wide, consisting of many styles and varieties to the eye. All the children who inhabited this refuge either played or went about daily tasks, transporting goods, cooking, gardening. It was such an odd sight to behold, one that Void and his crew couldn't shake their curiosity away from. There were so many questions in their minds. Was it only children? Why did they all refer to Kor as Boss Man? But more importantly, how in Matira's name was Kor even alive? Kor, how are you? I can't even begin to wrap my head around. Void nervously stuttered as both brothers walked side by side, leaving the others to lag behind by a few feet to listen. And I don't even know where to begin with you and your... Kor replied in his raspier voice before looking over his shoulder and eyeing the reflections from behind. Other sparks? More survivors? He asked with a now widening and realizing stare. Reflections, actually. Void answered the Kor's sudden drop and stunned silence. Look, before I even begin to explain, just cut to the chase. How on earth did you survive this time? Demanded the red-crested spark, in turn, heightening everyone's intrigue, especially Joby, who just continued to stare with distrustful eyes. Looking back forwards, Kor watched the children from around play and go about their day, letting their laughter and youth fill his soul and ease his brain. Adjusting himself, he took in a breath and went on with what was a most needed elaboration. It is no secret, brother. When you flipped my worldview upside down, I knew from the second that the matter vat dropped that I was gonna die. With that knowledge in mind, I intended to die as a spark, not a monster. Kor began as a small thorn-looking child kicked a ball across the gravel road they marched upon, running in front of them as they did so. After bidding my farewells to you all, I went down the chute and collapsed the matter vat, in turn, imploding the reformatter entirely. My death would have been just, but by some twist of fate, it was not to be. Kor went on as he then looked at his metal burnt, hardened, melted hands that wriggled with dark matter energy within their seams. When the matter was fully released, all of its energy, the power from so many different worlds all swirled together, creating an electronic pull so strong that it somehow tore a wormhole open to this realm. This beyond, as some of the children call it. The place from our folk stories. Kor quietly exclaimed, causing Void to perk up with realizing eyes. So that's what happened. When you released the matter, all the power that was taken from alternative realities, that's what opened above the reformatter. That's how you got here, wasn't it? Void speculated, causing Jida and Pavnu's jaws to drop a tad, but for their reflections to just stare with curious and confused eyes. Joby, however, only grew angrier at this fact. It's just a theory. The children here have told me many odd ways they had all gotten to this place. The magnitude of alternative world power could have been the key ingredients in mine. Looking up, Cor gestured towards more of the children, who all looked so happy and free. For being in the middle of such a city, it was truly baffling. Although sustaining heavy damage, the matter within me, our spark essence, as well as getting doused in a heavy vat of literal life juice, gave me enough strength to survive the crash. Cor revealed as he looked off to the side, seeing a bunch of children enjoying their time within a pool area near the force field's border. It wasn't all easy, however. A support beam had fallen upon my waist, as the entirety of the reformatter's shredded remains towered above. I laid injured for days, expecting and accepting my fate to have been a slow death. Until they found me. Raising a hand, Cor gestured the Jojo, Ironhoof, Yerrick, Mori, and Kat off to the side, as they now ascended a spiraling wooden staircase to an upper building made out of a large cherry tree. The reformatter crashed a few miles off from where we are now. They, at the time, had already set this place up, this home for lost souls. When they discovered me, they got me out, dragged me on an old frickin' sled to this place, this refuge for people like me, souls who had gotten themselves stuck. Cor continued to reveal as they all crossed into a town center where a large mall fountain sat, directly underneath the force field's center top. They nursed me back to my full strength, and cared for me minus my grueling appearance. Soon after, I eventually began to learn about this world more, how it works, what makes things tick. Cor went on before an odd-looking deer child suddenly tripped and fell, scraping their knee upon the gravel sands. "Child!" Cor exclaimed as he quickly rushed over and knelt down to the whimpering little one to everyone's surprise.
Ow, my leg.
They said as Cor gave the little kid a smile, sent a cold sensation to his palm, and then pressed it on their wound, using the same healing factor that Void had used upon Jaida's arm so many years ago now. "There you go, little one. It's but a scratch. You'll be just fine," Cor expressed in a fatherly tone before opening his arm hatch, taking out what appeared to be a roll of band-aids. "I'm not buying any of this. What exactly do you do in this place? Are you forcing these kids to work? Testing them? Have you begun your little experiments on them just like me?" Joby barked, leaving Void to turn with a wince. "Sweet pea," he said before getting pushed back by her metal hand. "No! I want to know! What is it that you do here, Cor?" Joey spat with clenched hands, as Cor simply just looked down at the little deer in his arms. With an empty, stared face, he took in a breath, stood up, and looked over his shoulder, with the same eyes he held when saving everybody in Void's world. "I'm doing what I was meant to do. What I should have done for you, my child," Cor stated as he now carried the small animal kid within his arms. "Teach." Looking up, Cor eyed the force field's power cell above, before speaking anew in a low breath. "The children here are a found family. They all ended up in this place because, well, they're kids. They got too curious in the legends, played ritual games thought to be dumb fun, went snooping into things they weren't supposed to. It's why there's no adults outside of myself. Their curiosity got them trapped here." Cor went on before closing his eyes in thought. "And when I came along, they all looked up to me for parental guidance, for hope." Cor explained before setting the deer kid down, who smiled and went on their way. "They all helped me. I knew deep down that this was my second chance to at least try and be better. So, I helped them in return." Cor went on with his tale before projecting an orange blueprint of the town. "The force field is constructed out of the remnants of the reformatter. What we could salvage, that is. A machine once used to destroy now defends their home from this world's ungodly threats." Giving a tiny little smile, Cor deactivated the hologram and turned back to everyone, specifically Joby, who just glared with a mixed pair of eyes, They call me Boss Man because it's a nickname they've all collectively given to me. I don't force them to work. I don't test on them as I did you, Joby. I would never do that again. I've instead become a teacher once more. In all realms of life, it would seem these days. Putting his hands behind his back, Core didn't look to be proud of what he was saying, as if it would just apologize and mend the wound he had inflicted on his family and little girl. He wasn't dumb. He knew that these words in the end would mean nothing for Joby's fragile heart. I've lost count of the years spent here. When you enter into the beyond, you just stop aging. You remain stuck in place and time for eternity, it would seem. Judging by you, my daughter, it seems I've been trying to do better for a long time now. Core sadly spoke as he locked his eyes with their golden haze that had been welling with tears. Good for you, Dad. Good for you. Joby spat with a shattered and disbelieving smirk before turning on her heel and walking off in another direction in a state of pure rage. Joby! Core tried to call, but the light matter girl was already off down another path, with visible tears trickling down her cheeks. With a conflicted gaze, Void, Jida, and Pofnu approached the older Spark, who just watched his daughter march off in pain. Core. She just needs some space. Void tried to speak before suddenly getting cut off. She has every right in the Omniverse to be angry with me. As do you. Core affirmed before looking back down to the three beneath him. I've already accepted that no matter what I do now, it will never repair the sins of my past. It is a wound that shall forever bleed. Core sadly stated with a sense of acceptance, before looking into his brother's and his wife's eyes. I'm not asking for forgiveness, nor ever will for what I have done. I'm merely expressing where I am now in life. Nothing more, nothing less. Without saying a word or knowing how to really respond, Void and Jida just held each other's hands as Pofnu crossed her arms in thought. Walking up from behind, the reflections all eyed Core, who just gave an inquisitive stare back. The blue sun had now begun to set, creating a purple haze to glint upon their souls, making the motions feel all the more rocky in that moment. Now, would you care to explain what you're doing here? Core asked as he crossed his arms in a deeper sense of thought. Do you have somewhere we could sit? It's a long story. Jida asked, leaving Core to nod his head. Come, I'll ready some dinner. He gestured with a hand wave as he now began the march in a different direction. Sorry for our silence, brother. We didn't want to indulge with your family matters. T apologized with a hand on the Void's shoulder as he watched the orange spark walk off. Yet there's another thing we have in common. It's family drama, it would seem. V added as he slowly began to follow behind his brother's reflection. Don't even get me started. Vivian added while placing her regular hand upon her hip and tilting to the side. It's a constant, it would seem. Bo joined in while Chibi remained silent upon V's shoulder. Father, I'm gonna go find Joby. I can try and reason with her. But be careful around him. I don't exactly trust him either. Pofnu said with a red surge to her tails, leaving Void and Jida to turn and nod. Go ahead, honey. You of all people could calm her down. Void gave the okay before taking a breath and following suit behind Core and V, with Jida and the others in tow. High above, in a now darkened purple sky, a bright pink moon glimmered beautifully for all to see. Those who hadn't turned in for bed, that was. All around, the three Beyonders continued the watch on, yet remained restrained by the ominous, staticky beacon from afar. Now sitting atop the town's highest building, Void, Jida, along with their reflections, all rested around a makeshift campfire that glimmered in a starry space shine. Within their hands, they all held bowls of a vegetable kind of soup like porridge, sprinkled with hints of salt and pepper inside. The meal was surprisingly tasty and delicate, while having been cooking in a pot above the flames and giving everyone a well-needed food rest. The large group all now sat in beach chairs, old seats, and even a bucket for poor Chibi. It wasn't the greatest thing in the world, but it could have been much worse. Pulling an old, crusty bar stool up, Core, with his cloak still blowing, took a seat away from the others by a few long inches and eyed them down in his pumpkin-flared stare.
"Please, explain,"
he asked, cutting right to the chase without so much as getting himself a meal. Looking at Jida with his red shines, Void took in a breath and returned his sights upon his brother, who seemed to escape death just as much as himself. After collecting his thoughts, Void began to speak his tale once again. "We're here on a family matter, Core. A very important one," Void revealed while projecting an image before everyone's eyes. "It's our son. Your nephew. Jay. He's got himself trapped here." Void revealed as an image of Jay formed within the hologram, one taken a few days before everything went to hell.
"Your child?"
Core reacted with widening eyes as he leaned in with an intrigued hand to his chin.
"How?"
he then asked, wanting to learn more. However, with his now being a first for both V and Chibi getting the full scoop as well. "He was born with special abilities, Core. My fire, you and Void spark essence. He was gifted. That gift carried a terrible curse with it." Jida continued on before Void jumped back into his words. "Because me and Jida were born from separate universes, Jay, biologically speaking, he was also born as a... Void couldn't even finish it, as he changed the image to Lotus and the glitches.
"Wait. He was born as one of... them?"
Core realized as he eyed the image of Lotus, recognizing it as the monster that destroyed his world, his school, his children. The Glitch King, Lotus. When me and Jida defeated him, he turned into a little cube. A small, blank cube that we couldn't destroy. So we locked him away in our basement, shortly after we thought you to have died. When Jay was born, his energy somehow reawakened the king, in turn, leading that bastard to trick our son into earning his trust, releasing him back to life. Void continued to explain in dour words as he projected the hologram of the Mayor rally fight, leaving Core in silence and shock. In the end, Jay, he saved us by fighting back. He saved everyone. But he did this by trapping himself along with Lotus into this world. This place. For so long we have fought to get here, leading me to go against the warnings of our elders. Void went on as he gestured to the reflections. Core, meet your siblings. The Red Spark said, as everyone began to introduce themselves. Hi, I'm T the Matterbirth. The inventor said with a small smile and wave. And I'm his wife, Jida. But you can just call me Tiger. His spectral spouse greeted as the others began to speak up. Vivian Celeste, daughter, gruffed out the wintry spark. Road Star Watcher. The Cyclops Void variant introduced, while putting a hand to his chest.
Via the Matterbirth.
The big green guy spoke, leaving the last of them to wave. And you can call me Chibi. Blinking in disbelief, Kor just nodded to the others before muttering the words,
Tira's might,
under his breath. Me, Jida, Joby, and Pofnu. She was the fox you saw with us. We found a lead, a spell between reflections that could get us here. With our conjoined powers, we all traveled to this place, and immediately felt both Jay and Lotus. They're still here, Kor. And in that, Void exclaimed as he pointed to the distant spire. Do you happen to know what that is? Staring in astonishment, Kor immediately stood up and swung his head towards the massive crystal tower before exclaiming aloud.
The Pillar of Creation? Your son and that thing are the ones who infected it?
Kor asked with a burning stare, leaving everyone a tad confused. The Pillar of Creation? Void inquired, as they all looked up to the purple and red glowing tower.
Yes. That's what the big guys call it, at least.
Kor replied, while pointing at the rider in the far-off distance. Wait a second. Those things can talk? Vivian inquired, with a baffled tone, as they all now stood and looked towards the tower.
Yes. They do, or I should say, did. Every so often, they would chant mystical words through these lands, communicating, always referring to that as the Pillar of Creation, the center of everything.
Kor explained while eyeing the crystallized structure.
It used to be a large energy fountain that flowed with life, you see. Until one day, a purple comet came blasting into this world and collided into the spire, turning it into its current crystallized state, changing the energy into the static you see now.
Kor elaborated while gesturing towards the Beyonders.
The big guys tried to take action and fix it, but the energy quickly turned the static, and it fought back.
The dark matter-infested spark explained, while pointing to the restraints around the Beyonders' bodies.
They've been motionless for a long while now. This world has been acting strange ever since.
Turning his sights back upon the Pillar of Creation, Kor's face furrowed as his mind began to race once again.
The world has remained intact since the comet's infection, but violence has risen significantly. Control has begun to falter. This world, it seems to have begun to finally crack.
Kor said, as he gestured towards the sky, where faint yet visible cracks had begun to form.
If what you say is true, then there is something off with either your boy or that monster he took with him.
Kor continued before Jida suddenly gasped aloud. Void! Oh God! She nervously spoke, getting her husband to turn in a curious way. Lotus's goal from the beginning has always been to start anew, right? To become a god of a whole new world. You don't think... She speculated, as everyone returned their sights upon the static chains around the Beyonders in growing weariness. Tira's might. He's trying to take control. The struggle I felt. Void recalled as he began to focus once again. Jay's holding Lotus back. He's keeping him from... Oh God. Oh, Jay. Void wordly realized as he narrowed his sights back upon the spire. For a long few moments, everyone just stood by his side, staring at their destination that had been so far away. A new wave of urgency had filled within their souls. If what Jida speculated was to be true, then Jay was most certainly in need of help. It was as though he was a linchpin in keeping everything that existed together. He had been holding Lotus back from taking full control over the Beyonders. That thought alone was enough to make even the bravest of them feel a knot in their stomachs.
The Beyonders are the gods of our omniverse. They created us, all of us, but not the glitched. From what I've seen, heard, and learned, those old stories our people spoke of as fairy tales are as real as they can be. If the big guys fall, we fall as well.
Cor spoke anew while looking back to Void.
Are you telling me that the boy is the only thing keeping shit from hitting the fan?
He asked, leaving both Void and Jida to look back with worried eyes. I sense a conflict from afar. A mental battle of some kind. A stressful battle of restraints. Light and dark, good and evil. I'm not entirely certain. That's what it feels like. Reaching up, Void gripped his forehead and sat back down on his seat, trying to focus and feel for his son. It's still fuzzy, but he's holding on strong in some kind of way. Yet, I don't know. Void mumbled as the cold breeze of the night continued to flow on by. After a moment of silence, Cor suddenly coughed and gruffed with a wince. Looking away, he raised a hand to his mouth and began to shuffle off in an odd limp.
Excuse me for a moment,
he asked, leaving everyone to stare in an odd sense.
Cor, you alright?
Void asked as the larger spark began to descend down a flight of outer stairs. Without replying, he disappeared with another wave of coughs that left Void in an even more concerned state. Stay here, he asked towards Jida and the others before following his brother. Cor, you okay? He asked before descending the stairs as well. Man, what an odd day this has been, he said while crossing his arms in a deep sense of thought. You could say that again, Vivian agreed as she turned her sights back to the pillar of creation. You think your boy is really holding that bastard back? She then questioned, leaving Jida to contemplate. He's stubborn like me. If Void's senses hold true, then without a doubt. Jida assured while looking back at the spire with an accompanied side hug from Tiger. My baby. Just hang on a little bit more, the musician whispered as Void 2 approached and provided some well-needed comfort.
Joby! Joby! Joby!
Lowering her arm blaster and staring at a set of now shattered glass bottles, Joby huffed out a steam of anger before turning around and glaring at her sister. What? She asked in an annoyed manner, while Pavnu sat on an old wooden crate. The two sisters have now been situated within an area that was behind two large buildings, an almost alleyway type of sector that just grazed itself upon the bordering force field. Having settled here to clear her mind, Joby had now stacked up a set of boxes with glass bottles upon them. Shooting practice, as she weakly considered it, letting off steam. Sister, I understand that you're in a bad mindset right now, Pavnu began as she slowly got off the crate and approached Joby's steaming form. No shit. So let me deal with it on my own terms. Joey spat back before charging her blaster and taking aim again. I'm afraid I can't really do that. And I don't think shooting bottles is what I'd call dealing with it. Pavnu retorted while crossing her arms and raising an eyebrow. Like you'd understand what's going through my head at the moment. Joey boasted as she took another shot, shattering apart more glass bottles. Uncrossing her arms and placing both hands on her hips, Pavnu bit the inside of her cheek before thinking on how to respond. Technically speaking, I could with one touch, but I don't need to do so. We all know what you went through. Pavnu replied before looking back up with her cherry red eyes. But standing here and hiding from him doesn't change the fact that, well, he's here, and you're here. Either he'll come searching for you, or Mother and Father will. You're just prolonging an inevitable confrontation. Pavnu stated in an honest state, as Joby shot another bottle to pieces. If he does, I'll cut off his hand again. I know I don't talk about my past much, but I'm not buying this whole boss man good guy attitude he's displaying. I don't care if it was out of some kind of love. He tortured me. Joby boasted while taking another shot. I would scream and cry as he ran tests on me day in and out. I was just a kid, Pavnu. It was like he didn't even realize it. I felt more like a lab rat than I did a daughter. Joby barked in sorrow as both sisters now stood side by side. People show love in many ways, both good and not so much. I'm not giving him an excuse for what he did to you. He very much so seems to understand that himself. Pavnu replied as her tail was gently swayed from side to side, emanating a beautiful cherry haze. But perhaps try to use words next time instead of violence. The kids here seem to love him. If that gives you any semblance of ease. Pavnu tried to reason as she placed a hand upon Joby's shoulder. You and I both know that Void isn't going to leave without him. As much as you don't want to hear it, your father is family too. And Sparks are very adamant with their own. Pavnu worriedly said, leaving Joby to lower her blaster and stare at the fizzling smoke and damage she had caused. That monster isn't my father. Void is. Joby said before looking at Pavnu in a stern stare. I don't care if I share his genes. Blood is blood. Family? That's a choice. Joby elaborated before retracting her weapons and walking off, even shoulder bumping Pavnu as she did so. Joby, you can't just... The kitsune tried to say, but Joby was already rounding the corner. Pavnu couldn't blame her sister for acting in such a way. It would be as if Lotus suddenly appeared as a good guy to her after destroying her own world. But deep down, the fox knew that Void wouldn't leave Core. He nearly died just trying to get him to change his ways. As much as Joby didn't want to acknowledge the facts, Core was now in some way a part of this equation too, whether she liked it or not. Sister, wait! The fox called before beginning to sprint after the light matter girl. Having listened to the sisters' conversation through a cracked open window, Core huffed in a sense of regret and took off his cloak, dropping it to the floor of his room that was rather basic in design. Wooden floorboards and walls, a blank old bed, a couple of flowers hanging above, with an added mirror to finish it off. Core! Hey, are you... okay? Oh my god. Void asked as he suddenly barged into his brother's room to fully get a good look at his whole body. Core's main form was the same as before, However, like his arms, the entirety of his metal body had been desaturated, rusted, chipped, and infested with new dark matter add-ons. The first discernible new detail Void noticed was that Core had 6 long and sharp matter spikes protruding out of his back, making him look almost like a jacked up Halloween version of Godzilla. The toes on his metal feet were now claws like his fingers, taloned, sharp, and looking akin to his back spikes. Upon his chest, 4 different colored ambered rocks lay lodged within: purple, yellow, green, and red, having replaced his old orange lights that used to shine bright. Dark matter oozed and wriggled beneath his seams, causing some of them to shift and pulse, making Core look like a freak experiment gone wrong. Core, Void said with a sense of sorrow towards his brother, who looked back with a sense of shame.
Messed up, isn't it? Frankly, rather deserved.
Core greeted as he coughed again and sat on his bed. Looking from his brother and then to the door, Void turned and then gently shut it, giving the brother some alone time to just talk one-on-one. Does it hurt, having all that stuff growing out of you? Void worriedly asked as he turned back around and simply took a seat on the floor.
All the time.
Core replied as he wiped his mouth, which had begun to ooze with a little bit of golden orange saliva. In silence, Void just gazed upon his brother, just stared back with tired and remorseful eyes. The younger spark wanted to say something, anything, but it was hard. After everything that had happened up to this point, Void was unsure on even where to really begin. Core, however, knew right away.
Did you show her the sunset for me?
He asked, leaving Void to gently nod his head.
Every single one of them.
He answered, as the sounds of the night began to engulf the room.
Was she? Is she happy?
The older Novason then asked, leaving Void to nod once again. Of course. She grew up with love and adventure. Everything a child could have asked for. I tried my best. Void replied, leaving Core to just faintly smile.
Good. Thank you. So much.
Core thanked as he looked out his window and towards the pink moon in the sky.
Alice and Evelyn.
Smiling a tad himself, Void sat upright and spoke with a sense of positivity within his heart. They had a little girl, if that gives you an indication. Perking up, Core looked back to Void with an astonished smile before nodding with a sense of ease.
Is her name Comet?
Core asked, leaving Void to tilt his head in surprise. Yeah. How'd you know? Looking back at the moon with a wave of joy in his heart, Core sighed before explaining.
Because Evelyn would always say that their child would be named as such if the day ever came. I am happy to hear their dreams came true.
Core expressed before his face dropped once again.
Jay. What is he like?
Falling silent for a few moments, Void's mind began to bounce between so many thoughts for his son. So much love, so much joy, so much that he had missed. He's the best kid I've ever come to know. He's funny, talented, and he's got a good heart. Is all that Void could say before resting a hand on the ground and propping a knee up. He's our entire world. He's everything to us. We came here because we couldn't lose him. And we're not leaving till we bring him home. Void expressed, causing Core's mind to shift.
Brother, where Jay's at, the road ahead it's one that is more deadly than you could possibly imagine.
Kor said before standing back to his feet.
After years of studying this place, I've come to realize that the beyond it's not safe outside of this force field. The entirety of it is like one big circular board game.
Kor explained as he projected a hologram of the Beyond's layouts, which was indeed just one large circle in the middle of a starry abyss.
You and your family landed in the outer ring, the forest. Right now you're in Ring 2, the city.
The older Novason elaborated as he pointed to an inner ring around the map, blinking green as demonstration.
The Pillar of Creation is the center of this massive playing field. Once, and if you leave the city, you enter what we call the Desert of the Lingering Past.
Kor explained as the ring past the city buzzed with a yellow shine.
The closer you get to the pillar, the stronger your memories will take form. Deadlier, more ruthless than the last. If you were to even pass the desert, you'd be entering unknown territories. Rings that even I have no knowledge of.
Kor worldly expressed as he eyed Void's inquisitive gaze.
The Beyonders manifest these memory illusions in order to protect the pillar. However, with both your son and that monster holding them back, who knows what kind of horrors lay in wait. I hate to say it, but it's too dangerous.
Kor finished before depleting the hologram and sitting back down. Too dangerous? I'm sorry, but those two words aren't going to stop me from saving my boy. Void boasted as he stood back to his feet. We've come too far now to stop. He continued before Kor spat back.
If a giant storm monster manifested in the second layer, then imagine what could lay ahead in the desert. Void, no soul has ever come back. You'll die before you even reach the fourth ring.
Kor exclaimed with worried eyes as Void charged with his red energy. Me and my crew aren't normal souls, Kor. Together we were able to beat a Lotus reflection. I'm more than confident that we would make it. Void continued, leaving Kor to furrow his brow.
Void, listen to me.
Kor pleaded as Void continued on. We're going and we're going to power through it. Why don't you come with us? Void then asked, leaving Kor to wince.
Void.
Kor croaked. Come on, we could use your help, he asked.
Void,
Kor tried to speak. We could use your guidance. Jake could finally meet his uncle. He continued before Kor shouted aloud.
No! No.
Falling silent towards the shout, Void eyed his brother's stern stare as he glared with a mixture of emotions, ones that only held a sense of pain.
You're acting as though the past never happened. You're treating me as a friend rather than an enemy. I can't join you, Void. Not after what I have done.
Kor sadly expressed before looking at the floor in thought. But you proved to all of us that you can do the right thing. You destroyed the reformatter. You freed all the life you took. You're now a teacher for all these kids. Void tried to reason before Kor spat back.
I took the lives of too many innocent souls. Yeah, that's really someone your boy should meet.
Kor exclaimed as he looked back with a tired eye.
Void, I appreciate the fact that you still have the heart to view me as your brother. But I can't just slot myself in with your little group. My body is too fucked up even if I wanted to. Look at me!
Kor boasted as his spines began to shimmer. Joby, she... Void tried to speak before Cor erupted again.
She doesn't want me in her life, and I will respect her wishes, because I don't need to screw it up for her again.
With a sad stare, Void approached and rested a hand over his brother's shoulder, ever so gently shaking as he did so. Cor. Void tried to reason as his brother continued on with his side of the coin.
Her life is with you, Anjida, and mine is here. This world where I can't hurt anybody else. A place where I can feel like my old self again.
Now both sitting down, the two brothers rested on the bed, side by side, just looking down within their own sense of thought. But we could take you back, bring you home. You and Joby could reason. Evelyn and Atlas, they... Void tried the reason before Cor cut himself in again.
They would be better off thinking me dead. Void, I can see what you're trying to do. You've lost me twice. You don't want to lose me again.
Cor spoke from the heart as he turned and looked at his little brother.
But keeping me around would only derail your lives. You may see the good in me, but for everyone else, there is no home for my soul to return to. And I've accepted that. And so should you.
In silence, Void held his hands together, while Cor gently rested an arm over his red glowing body. I'm sorry. Void spoke before turning and hugging his brother. I just thought I'd never get the chance to see you again. Hanging his head low, Cor reached around with both arms and held his brother close. Minus all the drama, trouble, and damage, in the end, they were still brothers, and that would never change.
I've missed you, too.
Cor replied, as both pulled back and stared with tired gazes.
I know you. I know I can't stop you. If you truly want to venture forth into danger, then I will prepare you some gear for the morning. I advise that you go get some rest. Tents are still above, remember?
Cor asked as he had given the others some tents beside the fire on the roof before making dinner. Of course. I'm sorry for pushing. Void apologized as he stood and slowly began to make his way towards the door.
And I'm sorry for disappointing.
Cor replied as Void sadly and silently walked away, shutting the door behind him as he did so. Taking in a low breath, Cor slowly stood with an audible crack coming from within. His metal joints popped and creaked as he now eyed himself in the mirror. Looking into his soul of disappointment, Cor raised his right arm up and deployed a natural arm blade that had grown underneath his metal. The blade was like his spikes, a crystallized orange matter that hummed with energy. The orange shine both shimmered brightly and intensely off Cor's face as he glared upon it with disgust. Retracting it back into his limb, he locked his eyes with himself once more and began to question what he should do. He'd be lying if a part of him didn't want to help aid his brother, but another was telling him to stay put, to not ruin things again. Huffing, Cor turned away, cracked his neck, and went to lay down, choosing to sleep on the matter and form a final decision. Ascending the steps to the roof, Void sighed deeply and set his sights upon his wife and reflections, who had all returned to the campfire, seeming to chat and truthfully enjoy themselves. Hey, Novason's back. T realized with a wave, getting everyone to turn towards his red marching form. Hey, is he alright? Jida inquired as the red spark pulled up a chair and sat, releasing a pent-up breath as he did so. He's fine, I suppose. Dark matter looks to have completely taken over his inner body. It's honestly some genuine body horror type stuff. I don't want to describe it. Void answered as Jida reached out to rub his back. Dark matter? V inquired with a stern and green flared stare. Don't worry. He's in control of it. But man, he's changed. Void replied as he set his sights upon the pillar of creation in the distance. He's definitely not the monster we faced last time, but he sounds so shattered, yet at the same time whole. It's hard to explain. Nodding, Jida huddled in close to his side, while the reflections all eyed the pair in a curious nature. If you don't mind me asking, what exactly did Core do? I haven't seen Joey that pissed off until now. Vivian inquired as she continued to eat from her bowl of veggies. He wasn't a tyrant king like mine, was he? T asked. Horror-controlled soul. T added. No. My Core was someone who desperately wanted to revive my race of sparks. Him and 2 friends survived the glitch attack, and eventually found a heavy source of matter leaking from a mirror space. With it, he found a method in genetically creating sparks through scientific means, Joby having been his first successful creation. Void began to explain as he stared into the fiery starry haze. However, Core created a device called the Reformatter. He used it to drain worlds that had a good chunk of matter within them. It was genocide, really. To this, the reflections all stared with widening eyes and shocked expressions. Holy shit, Tiger nervously expressed as she huddled in the T's side. Not only that, he would experiment on Joby. It was in order to keep her alive, to make sure she was healthy as again. She was a product of science. However, they were not painless methods. She never fully told me what he did, but she always refers to it as torture. Raising his metal hands up, Void pressed them to his mouth as the fire continued to rage on. By some shred of luck, Joby sent the Reformatter crashing into my world, Jida's world, where me, Core, and his friends reunited. He told us the plan of resurrection, but left out the whole world-destroying aspect. After helping him fix the ship, Joby revealed the dark truth to me. And next thing we knew, the doomsday clock was at an all-time high. Void continued on as all the reflections listened in with stern stares. However, minus what he had done, he was still my brother, my own kind. I knew deep within he was a good man. In the end, I was able to convince him to stop his tyranny. Through that, he chose to sacrifice himself to destroy the machine. As you heard, I guess the mixture of all the energies was enough to open a portal to the beyond. 14 years later, and man. Void finished, leaving everyone shell-shocked with his tale. Now, before you all get the idea of murdering him in his sleep, I want you to recognize that he's a victim of survivor's guilt. That doesn't change what he's done, of course, but you all see how he's recognized that. He told me front and center when I was down there with him. Void tried the reason, as all the reflections just looked on with thoughtful expressions. Well, my Core kinda had a redemption. Returned from the dead as a ghost to help me beat the memory storm, after what he had done. So you don't need to worry about me. T said as he scratched his beard, while Tiger nuzzled into his side. Mine fought by my side during the Second War. Died getting me to the tower Lotus used as a base. When I was a hero, not a tyrant. V revealed, causing Chibi to frown and rub the Matterbird's head as a way of comfort. I'm sorry for your loss. Void expressed, as both Vode and Vivian remained silent. Never had a sibling, but when you make the sacrifice play after doing something like that, it's a 50-50 split on respect, if you ask me. She then spoke, while gently leaning in the Vode's side with a yawn. A touchy subject, but as long as he doesn't step out of line, I can tolerate it. The yellow Cyclops-eyed Spark responded, as he allowed for Vivian to lay down in his lap to rest. I mean, I've never had a brother either, so, whatever the group says, I suppose. Chibi added as he too yawned and slumped into the back half of V's scarf. He's also apparently got some gear we can use in the morning. Turns out the Beyond is a layered structure designed by a ring pattern. The further we get in, apparently, the more dangerous it becomes. Void added while he grew tired, as Jida grew sleepy as well upon his side. Is Core coming with us? She asked. No. He doesn't want to get involved with our troubles. Honestly, I think it's primarily just to not piss off Joby any more than she already is. Void theorized as he leaned against his wife's side. Well, at least we got some luck in that regard. If that gear isn't a vehicle, then I may as well cut off his other hand. Vivian yawned out before falling asleep upon her brother's lap. I guess we'll have to just wait and see then. And please don't do that if so. Void asked as everyone began to agree that it was time for bed. Well, I'll see you all in the morning. We got the tents all set up and so, yeah. T. Tylerly said as he scooped his wife up and gestured to the 5 tents near the roof sides. Yeah, it's best we get some shut-eye. This one of which is already snoring. Vode tiredly yawned out before picking Vivian up and turning heel. Rest well, friends. We'll see you in the morning. V agreed as both him and Chibi marched off to bed. Together, both Void and T now stood with their wives in their arms. Nodding, the two of them bid their goodnights and went to their tents to rest the night away and await the upcoming sunrise.